1. This story actually happened back when I was 18 years old and lived on my own. I came from a small town of around 1,000 people and moved to a city about 2 hours away for college. I wasn't naive due to my upbringing, but still very new to the whole "my neighbors are on the other side of the wall, not 2 miles away" thing. I'm around 5'3", bigger girl, but at the time of this story I was more in shape and on the curvier side of being chubby. So I caught some unwanted attention. This is important. My apartment was on the bad side of town. The road it was next to had some motels notorious for housing dealers, streetwalkers, addicts, etc., and a gas station that had to close at 9 p.m. because it could rob so much. My building was set up that every time someone walked by it on the road, you could see into the first 2 apartments' windows if the blinds were open. I lived in apartment number 2. Even though I lived on my own, my cousin was in the military at the time and would have to come into the city 1 weekend out of the month for drills and such. Him and his buddies decided that staying at my place during those weekends was cheaper than a hotel, and it was pretty laid back. So it became a normal thing for me to have 4 or 5 army dudes crashing on my living room floor. These guys staying with me is a thing that saved my butt one night. One night all the guys had gone out to a party at a buddy's house except for my cousin. They left their cars at my complex, and my cuz was just going to pick them all up in the morning. Him and I stayed up and talked pretty late into the night, and I headed upstairs for bed around 1 a.m. About an hour later there was a knock at my front door. I thought maybe my cousin had locked himself out or something after he went to get a tobacco fix. So I came downstairs, just to see him sitting up on the couch, staring at my front door. My front door is at the foot of my stairs, so I jumped out of my skin when another round of knocks landed on the door, louder this time. My cousin got up from the couch and we just stood in the darkness, listening. Nothing happened for a minute, and I started to think it was just one of my neighbor's friends who had a few too many and mixed up our apartment numbers, when another small knock came, followed by, "Hey, my car broke down up the road. I was wondering if I can get some help." It was a male's voice. He didn't sound creepy, but there was something about the situation that felt off. Neither me nor my cousin moved from where we were standing in the living room. He whispered to not say anything, and I just nodded. "Come on, I just need a ride to my friend's house. It's not that far away." We still said nothing. "Hello?" At this point my cousin had grabbed a baseball bat out of one of the other guy's duffel bag. Something the guy kept on him since it was cheaper than a gun. He walked over to the window and was about to peek out the blinds. I didn't have a peephole, when the guy outside knocked really hard. "Hey!" he slams on the door. "I'm talking to you, girl!" My blood fucking went cold. How in the hell did he know a girl lived there? He tried the doorknob, locked, obviously, before slamming into the door again. "I just need some help with my car. Be a good girl and come and help me out of here." My cousin stepped forward quickly to open the door, super mad at this point, and I stopped him. The guy slammed on the door one more time before I heard a scraping, weird noise. I quickly realized it was the sound of him sliding down the door to sit in front of it. My cousin peeked out the blinds and just watches the guy sit there, head down in the darkness, not doing anything. I didn't want to go upstairs to get my phone, because sometimes my stairs squeaked really loudly, and I didn't want the guy to hear movement inside. My cousin's phone was dead as hell, so calling the cops was out until it charged enough to turn on. About 10 minutes later, the dude was stood up and knocked again. This time my cousin threw the door open quickly and yelled, "It's 2 a.m. What do you want?" The guy froze. My cousin isn't a tall guy or anything, but for someone expecting a young woman seeing an angry, muscular, shirtless dude in army pants, holding a baseball bat, was probably somewhat intimidating. They stared at each other for a second. I was out of eyesight from the door, and could only see my cousin, not the man, saying nothing. My cousin broke the silence. "Well, what do you need, man?" The dude answered in quiet silence, muttering something about having the wrong apartment, and that he was sorry to disturb him before turning away quickly and walking out of the complex's driveway, up the road, and out of sight. I'm glad my cousin stayed at my place instead of going out that night. I have no other explanation for how the guy knew a female lived there, besides that he had seen me walk in or out of my place before and had this planned. We didn't call the cops because it was too dark to see the guy's face under the hat he was wearing, and couldn't really give a good description. I never got a knock at my door again for the next year or so that I lived there. So dude that knocked on my door at 2 a.m. Glad you met my cousin and not me. 2. This happened 3, almost 4 years ago. I started dating a guy, let's call him Bobby. Bobby had a female friend named Lee. Now when I got into the relationship, I knew her. They were business partners and she'd stay over at his house if they had business trips to go on. It was brought up when we first started dating and it didn't bother me at all. I would come over on weekdays and stay the night with him, and she'd come over on the weekends while I was working and stay at his place so they could travel together. I trusted Bobby to the fullest and never once did anything happen between them. Everything was great, no problems. That was until I tried to reach out to her to be friends. Bobby always told me that we had the same interests and I didn't have many close friends, so I figured we'd be a perfect friend match. I'd message her and at first she would respond very bluntly. She didn't seem interested in talking to me, however, when Bobby and I would be together, she would message me constantly, asking about my day, asking what we were up to, talking about her day, etc. This really bothered me. To me it seemed like she was just talking to me, wanting to know what Bobby was up to. When I brought this to his attention, he didn't see much wrong with it. He just chalked it up to her having free time, so I let that go. Then I started to notice when she'd post online, it always had to do with Bobby. Always. It was either Bobby or some love quotes. Which was when I got super suspicious. Again, being one to talk things out. I asked him about it. He still didn't see anything concerning, but he saw it was affecting me, so he said he'd talk with her. The pattern slowed down, and I let that go. Until, yes, there's more. She started posting pictures of her wearing his clothes. This really made me mad. I'd never been so mad in my life. I immediately went up to Bobby and started fussing about these pictures. He was kinda shocked. He didn't really notice she was wearing his clothes in the pictures until he looked closer. Again, he said he talked with her about it, but he did let her borrow them because she said she had no other clothes to wear at the time. At this point, I was worried. Was there some secret love affair? Was there something I wasn't seeing that should make me concerned? This drove me into madness, basically. I became the obsessive girlfriend who would always want to know where he was or what he was up to. I feel awful even saying that I was that way, but it's true. I didn't even want to be that way, it just happened. At this point, Bobby has sustained a knee injury from work and was unable to work. This drove him to start drinking more and more often. Lee and I started to talk more at this point. We would tell each other what was happening and how we felt. We supported each other, and even though Bobby started to become sicker and sicker, I still didn't trust her, but at this point this was what kept me sane, and I think she saw this as keeping her in the picture. After the fact, Bobby tells me this is when she started to message him non-stop. She'd call hundreds of times. When he didn't answer, she threatened to kill herself. She had even straight up slapped him in the face or hit him sometimes. He says he was no angel either by smacking her back, but at this point, with his always slightly intoxicated mind, he saw her as a friend that was a guy more than a friend that was a girl. He'd never smacked me, even though he would say hurtful things while he was drunk. This was the tipping point for everyone. They had decided to go on a trip to see a show. Now, Bobby didn't want to hurt my feelings because he didn't have any money to get me a ticket. Plus, I was still working, and the chance of me getting off to see the show were slim to none. Lee, on the other hand, refused to invite me. She wanted it to be just him and her. Side note, she ended up paying for everything because she wanted to get on Bobby's good side. At neither point did either bring it up or ask me if I wanted to go. Bobby out of fear of hurting my feelings, and her seeing it as a chance for them to be together. While they were gone, I found out that's what they were up to. I noticed Facebook was blowing up with people talking about the show, and the timing of everything was just too identical to ignore. I brought this up. Of course, both denied. But I knew in my heart that this was happening. During their time staying there, she started to really badmouth me from what Bobby said. It got to the point where Bobby just wanted to leave but had no excuse to go. She drove there, she paid, no way to get out. That's when I'd gotten broken into at home. Which, when I think on it, that's a crazy timing of events. I frantically called him. He was on his way in seconds, forcing her to leave so he could come home to see me. She refused at first, saying she was too tired, but she then decided to take him home. After that, he decided to break his friendship off with her. She may have been his only ride to business trips, but he didn't care. His knee was keeping him from going to most of them anyway, so he decided to quit his job for a bit and focus on getting his knee better and getting sober, which thankfully he's sober now and he's been doing fabulous. When the break-off happened, she went mental. She bashed him on Facebook, saying he was abusive to her and he was a severe alcoholic, that he told her to kill herself and that no one should ever do business with him. People took sides, as they always do. At this point, I was just glad she was out of our hair, and we could rebuild our relationship again without worry. We blocked her and ignored her when she tried to reach out and apologize for what she had said and done, which was a crazy cycle of bashing him and then saying he was the best thing that ever happened to her. I would have said that was the end, but it's not. About a year ago, she added me on Snap and Insta, which didn't bother me because Bobby didn't have either of those, and the post would mostly just be me goofing off. I sent her a message saying I would never forget what happened, but I could forgive her, which she took well and understood, and we started to message. Well, that was a mistake. She slowly begun to make more cryptic posts on Insta and Snap, things like, "How did you get rid of something you once loved so much?" with a picture of a necklace he gave her forever ago, or, "I will never forget this memory," and it'll be a picture of a ticket of the show they went to that broke everyone apart. I didn't want to bring it up to Bobby because he was definitely not going to be happy that I forgave her after all she put us through. My lord, it had been 2 years and she was obsessed with him still. Keeping it to myself, I just replied cryptically back in posts of mine, being petty little me, which I guess drove her crazy. She then decided to post about a DVD which mysteriously disappeared after she collected her things when Bobby broke off his friendship with her. She took a picture of it and said she acquired it and loved it so much. That was it. I commented, "That looks familiar. I don't think that belongs to you." No response. I finally brought it up to Bobby, who wasn't happy I was still in communication with her, but he gave me the best advice. Let it go, and let it be. From that point on, I ignored her. Even after weeks of not replying to her or giving her attention, she kept messaging me. I should have just blocked her, but still in my petty heart I knew it bothered her seeing my posts, and the fact I was ignoring her. To this day, she still posts about him, after 2, almost 3 years of not being in full communication with her. So Lee, let's never meet again. Edit. Someone brought up the fact that Bobby could have been cheating and not telling me. But after the falling out, she sent me multiple messages telling me all the terrible things he had done and said. I asked her if they had ever had sex, and she told me it never happened. She did admit to me that she loved him. Also, at different points, she'd tell me she was a lesbian. I don't know if she really was thinking she was a lesbian, or if she was just doing this to keep the friendship with him going. 3. So this story takes place in Fayetteville, North Carolina, near Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I went to college 4 years ago. Anyone who is familiar with the area knows that Fayetteville has a large population of homeless vets near the base, also known as Vietnam. I had just turned 20 years old and moved out of the house for college over 2 hours away. I had previously worked at a nursing home for 2 years, so I have a special place in my heart for the struggling elderly. My roommate, male, and I had moved into a little apartment near the college and bought a rinky-dink dishwasher and dryer set off Craigslist. Well, the washer didn't last a week until it went out, and we had to start using a laundromat. My roommate was busy with homework, so I offered to do his laundry for him if he would do mine next week, and he agreed. So I grabbed a bag with laundry accessories, my phone, school books, and about $15 in quarters, and our clothes in a dirty hamper and left. The layout of the laundromat was, at the front of the store there were 2 rows of washers and then 2 rows of dryers near the back. Then dryers on the walls on the left-hand side near the front. There were 2 tables kitty-corner to each other. One on the front left-hand side, one at the back right-hand side, then chairs lining the left of the walls. At the laundromat, I threw all of our laundry into a machine, and pulled out one of my books for school to start studying. I was sitting at the table closest to the exit, towards the front. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a woman with a child sitting down on the chairs to the left, and I see an elderly man with a military hat standing in the middle aisle getting frustrated with a machine. It was really hard to watch, and I felt obligated to help him. I grabbed my bag with all my laundry stuff to come to his aid, and asked him if he would care for some help with the washer. He said yes, and I looked at his washer and he had no soap and was missing a quarter in the slots. As I got closer, I could smell his very potent stench of body odor coming from his laundry. I offered him a Tide Pod and gave him a quarter. He thanked me, then walked back over to the front tables. I pick up my book and start reading, and he catches the corner of my eye again. He was taking all of his other clothes off and putting them in the dryer. He was now only in a white undershirt, tank top, and his shorts. At this point I am realizing this man is indeed homeless and might have a few screws loose, so I should be careful. I watch him walk to the other table near the back of the store, then walk towards my table with a big trash bag, and he sits down on the other side of the table. I smile at him and he smiles back, showing that most of his teeth were missing and that his canines were very decayed. He starts small talk with me, until there was an awkward silence. I could tell he was really lonely and wanted to talk, so yet again I felt bad for him and I tried to strike up a conversation. I ask him about his military hat, and he got a flash of pride in his eye and tells me that he was a veteran that fought in Vietnam, and starts to tell me about all the things he used to do for the military. When he was finished telling me, I told him that my stepdad was a Korean vet, and I had a lot of respect for those who served and thanked him for his service. He asked me how my stepdad was, and I told him he died from cancer when I was younger, but I loved him very much. He looks me dead in the eye and tells me that he was sorry about my father, but I could call him Daddy any time, and then puts his hat on me. I started freaking out, thinking this man has lice, so I took it off relatively calmly and handed it back to him. I wasn't sure if he was trying to be funny or not, but I told him that he was making me very uncomfortable and I wanted to be left alone to my studies. He nodded and took his bag over to the other table. A few minutes passed, and the lady and her kids that were sitting to the left leave, and just like clockwork he comes over to sit with me again, this time without his bag. He came over and apologizes to me and explained that he didn't mean to be rude and gave me a bag of candy. I try to decline it, tell him that I have a dairy allergy, I do, but he refuses and puts it inside my bag of soaps. I say thank you, and he nods and sits back down. I try to ignore him, and he started to make noises like he's in pain to get my attention. Like maybe he was having a fibromyalgia flare-up or something. I asked him if he was okay, and he said, "Yes, I'm just getting old." I giggle, and then he tells me, "I'm sorry, but I have to tell you, you have the most beautiful red hair I've ever seen. You remind me of my girlfriend." I ask him to hold on, and I switch my clothes over to the dryer. So I ask him about his girlfriend. When I return, he tells me that she died of a heroin overdose 2 months ago. I tell him I'm sorry. He then asks if I would be his girlfriend, and without a second thought, I then try and convince him that I'm underage, and that would be highly inappropriate. I am 4'11" and about 100 pounds, so I figured it would have been believable. He then tells me that he doesn't care and can keep a secret. He then touches my hand that's on the table where he sat across from me. Shivers went up my spine, and I told him I'm sorry, sir, but no, I have a boyfriend, and pulled my hand away to text my roommate to come and help me now. At this point, his gaze seemed rather predatory, and my heart is beating out of my chest. I put my book down inside my bag and start gathering things to get the fuck out. I am trying to be slow enough not to alarm him or provoke unwanted behavior. I was wearing a tank top and sweatpants at the time, and he then comments that he can see my cleavage and they looked like nice titties, and he wished to suck on them. I stopped acknowledging him and threw my bag into the bottom of the hamper, started walking to the dryer where my clothes were, still sopping wet, and started shoving them as fast as I could into the hamper. All during this time he is telling me how he would take me to a hotel and do all these horribly graphic things to me if he had the money, and that he had 60 years of experience in pleasuring women. I still am trying to ignore him and have almost gotten all of my clothes. He then either picks up underwear that had fallen on the floor in my scramble, or had taken them from the hamper while I wasn't paying attention. The bright blue thong catches my eye, then I look at him. I look him dead in the eye as he flicks his tongue through the space of his missing front teeth, like a snake. He starts bringing my underwear to his face, which I snatch so fast it startles him. He starts hightailing it to his bag at the back of the mat, and I panic, and head to the door with all my belongings. I've never seen an old man run so damn fast. He grabs his bag and runs toward me, asking for a ride to a nearby town if I would wait for him. He grabs my shoulder in my struggle to open the door, and then I scream loud, and I have some pipes on me. He freezes. I make it out the door and then to my car without hearing him behind me. My guess he was looking around the parking lot and laundromat, making sure no one was around. I'm not sure, I wasn't paying attention. I threw my laundry in the back seat, and then he starts walking out to my car. He arrives at it just as I was getting in and locking my doors, asking for a ride again, pulling on my door handles, begging and crying. I have a total panic attack. I get home and wake up my roommate and just start bawling my eyes out. I tell him everything that happened and made him promise that he would go with me next time. I'm not sure why I did a lot of the things that led to it. I guess it's hard to have a clear head in stressful situations. All I know is that I'm so glad that I made it out. Dear Mr. Vietnam Vet, I hope we never meet again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 387. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I'd like to thank you for all the kind comments on the re-uploaded version of Neckbeards in the Wild number 10. I put that up the other night, at midnight, UK time. And I always appreciate that even though they are re-uploads, those videos still get a good number of views, they really do. I've got 2 more of those to do. We'll get to them as and when I can. No set schedule, no rush. But when I have a little time, I'll get them edited and pop them back up so they're there for everyone to enjoy. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.